It's a waiver wire Tuesday, and we're going over a bunch of wide receivers, a bunch of guys who have a lot of upside, some wide receivers to stash for the rest of the season. We're going to go over those right now, today. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're going hot and heavy on the waiver wire today with the running backs and wide receivers, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. And we're going to also drop a lot of deep dives on these players throughout the week, as many as possible on these trending players. Even if they got one last week, they'll get another one now because things change week to week in season. Click that subscribe button. Stop missing out. Ric Flair's watching you, and you do not want to disappoint Ric Flair. But we're going to start off with JuJu Smith-Schuster. Hot topic. Went off last night. 8 targets, 22 PPR fantasy points. Got a bye week coming up. Can you stomach that? And also, can you trust him? Because we got a 1-game sample here without Rashee Rice. He's running routes, getting a good opportunity rate with that, with a 68.2% route participation rate and that 22.9% target share, looking good. The ADOT's low, but very reminiscent of Rashee Rice's ADOT when he was in on the field anyways. But the thing is, he's getting targets, he's getting opportunities, he's getting work. So that's something you may want to look at. Plus, it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs got opportunity in their offense. They're explosive. They move the football. You may want to look at JuJu here. Wan'Dale Robinson should be picked up and rostered in your league. He should have been last week. We did a whole You Need video on him. We talked about him in the waiver wire videos. But he is on your waiver wire. You got to pick him up because he's getting targets, he's getting workload, and it may not always amount for fantasy points because his ADOT's super low, 4.4 last week. However, the volume is consistent, and that's something you got to look at. Josh Downs should be picked up in your league. He's on more waiver wires this week, but with Joe Flacco back there, the targets spray around a lot better. He's running on 70% of the routes. Had a 27% target share last week. He's always in the 20s. He's getting an elite target share right now. He's getting good volume. Short targets going his way. An 8 out of 6.9. We expect that out of Josh Downs, but the volume of 12 targets, 9 targets the week prior, and the 5 targets prior to that is looking good for him for the future. Jalen Tolbert's going to get volume, especially with Brandon Cooks out, but he has been productive off and on all season long. 15 points in week 2, 14 in week 3, 23 against the Steelers in week 5. We're running on almost 90% of the routes, 40 routes ran in that matchup. Again, that was a game script that kind of broke a little bit, even with the ground being sloshy there, but we're getting 11.9 average depth of target, and there's games where it's deeper than that for his average depth of target. 10 targets in his matchup, a 24% target share. He's going to be up and down with the volatility in targets, but the volume's going to be there this season, up and down for Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Polk is a rookie wide receiver to pay attention to. He's not going bonkers in fantasy production, but 6 targets last week, 7 targets the week before. We're running routes. We're starting to lead this team in targets and opportunity. Something to pay attention here. Jalen Polk does have some upside. I don't expect him to go off, but it could happen if this offense starts picking up the pace. Michael Wilson. So the thing about him is whenever they're playing a lockdown defense and you think Marvin Harrison is going to get shut down, you may want to look his way because he is getting deeper targets downfield. He's on the outside. He's on the boundary. He's always running a lot of routes. Even last year as a rookie, he was running around 80% of the routes. This week, he ran 84.4% of the routes, 20% target share, 15.8 average depth of target. That's elite work rate right there. Amounted to 14 fantasy points against a tough defense. Again, it's not going to be every week, but in tricky matchups, he might be a play for you. Alec Pierce is a Will Fuller-esque wide receiver. There's going to be games where he gives you nothing, and there's going to be games where he just blows up. He's deep ball steady. He connects on a deep ball or two, and it's going to be grandiose. It was last week. It has been a couple times this season. He's got some Rashid Shaheed in him. He's a guy that you just throw in your lineup and gamble with. You can't ask to start sit on him because if he gets overthrown a couple times, he's not going to hit. However, he's a player that's going to get those opportunities, and if it does bring in, it's going to hit. It's just a gamble, and you're just going to have to take it and eat it. A.D. Mitchell is going to be there sooner than later. He is cooking guys on routes. He's looking good on the tape. There's just a lot of good wide receivers in this offense. This is an offense that should be cooking more than what it is. There's a lot of talent in this passing game. He's a guy to look at, especially in deeper leagues, but the work rate's not there right now. But I would not be surprised if it's there later. Jordan Whittington is getting the work rate. 10 targets last week, 8 the week before. Ran on 41 routes, and the work is there. And he's getting a 22% target share. He is the safe, reliable option on those short routes. Tutu Atwell's got the speed in the offense. He also had a 22% target share, running a lot of routes, getting some deep targets too. Another guy to look at in this offense. And then on top of that, Demarcus Robinson. 5 targets, got the touchdown, ran on almost 100% of the routes. And I've been saying this all the time with these wide receivers. It's a carousel effect. You got 3 wide receivers getting volume in this offense. And on any given Sunday, any one of them can get it. Usually one does get it when, in terms of fantasy production, one gets kind of close, simmers a little bit, other one flatlines. In this matchup here, all 3 of them did a little something. All 3 of them did a little something. It can be different, but it is a carousel effect where you got 3 wide receivers here just fighting for a position for targets. Usually in this situation, because you got other teams like this, one will get more volume than the others, but the other 2 are still candidates to blow up on any given Sunday and usurp that lead dog in the pack. That being said, this is a carousel effect, and you just pick the one you like the most because it's all on Matt Stafford. He's the only one that knows, and he only knows when he's dropping back. Alan Lazard, he's been in these waiver wire videos, should be rostered in a lot of leagues, but there are leagues that he's not, but he's getting a lot of volume. He's getting those targets where Garrett Wilson's covered, and on top of that, he's getting some money targets in the end zone, so a guy to look at to play the matchups with. He's hit in double digits the last 3 weeks in a row. Mike Williams is running a lot of routes. He's getting more opportunity. He's running more snaps, got 4 targets. You might want him in deeper leagues. You might want him if you're hurting a little bit. We got a coaching change. That might change the volume in the offense. But Mike Williams has some upside here. Trey Tucker, like always, I expect him to be rostered by most of the viewers on my videos due to the You Need video I put out last week. And it held true to what I said. I expect him on most games to average 5+ targets a game. He got 5 targets. After that, the chips lay where they lay when it comes to fantasy production because, one, it's the Raiders. It's the Raiders. They're in weird matchups here. Things can be up and down. And 2, you can only guess the volume. The volume is the easiest thing to predict when it comes to these players. And then after that, you let the chips fall where they may. That's why we concentrate on targets, how deep the ball's going, how many routes they're running per game. We look at all that, and then we siphon that with the matchup and filter that to give you the best odds. And after that, it's up to the fantasy gods. The fantasy gods are going to be with Trey Tucker if he keeps getting 5+ targets per game and running on 90% of the routes. The work rate is there. Quentin Johnston didn't play last week. We had a bye week, but we're running a lot of routes. We're seeing a good target share. Getting a lot of questions about him. Off the waiver wire, rostered in 42% of leagues on Sleeper. He's got upside every given Sunday. It's going to be up and down with him due to how the targets are flowing. And with the Chargers here, there's not a lot of volume in the passing game. And also, if the outside's locked down, it's going to be a loud McConkey game. But he does have upside. He's a gamble week to week in your lineups. Jalen Tolbert is more for the deep leaguers here, or guys like me that love rookies, especially the UDFAs. First game ever with opportunity, and he's getting you like 50 receiving yards, catching 4 balls, bringing in his targets, running a good route participation rate. Like Xavier is out. How long he's going to be out, we don't know, but that means more opportunity for him. Adam Thielen should be back sooner than later, but you're watching from afar. But Jonathan Mingo, if you want something a little bit more concrete in this situation, he's running routes. He's getting opportunity in this offense. He's always been getting snaps and getting opportunity, just not really dialing in the fantasy production. There were moments in training camp where he was looking good, but I would look at him more in deeper leagues, traditional redraft, that's stay away. Plus, Andy Dalton's cooling down quite a bit now. Ray McCloud's always getting volume, always getting a chance. He is a security blanket underneath. He is really hurting Kyle Pitts. He's been doing so good, which is a good thing for him. Maybe not great for Kyle Pitts, but a 95% route participation rate, 61 routes ran on that matchup against Tampa Bay. He's getting a lot of work. He's getting targets. He's getting it underneath. So if they're playing against a lockdown defense, a tough defense, he might get some of them underneath targets a little bit more than expected, because that tough defense has to account for Drake London, has to account for Darnell Mooney, has to account for Kyle Pitts. And against softer defenses, he'll probably get a couple targets over the middle, giving him some upside. He's a good guy to have on your roster. He's a good guy to play the matchups with week in and week out. He's getting enough volume week to week. He only had one game with 3 targets. Rest of it's 5 or more. And an upside of 7 targets, upside of 9, to be real, of last week. The air yards aren't deep, but the volume's there. Ray McCloud's probably going to stay for the whole season as long as he's healthy. Xavier, Hutchinson. Nico Collins went out with an injury. We don't know how much longer he's going to be out, but Hutchinson is seeing volume. He's seeing workload. He's seeing opportunity with this happening. He can pinpoint the ball downfield. He's good at contested catches, strong hands, a rookie that we were looking at going into last year, and is a guy to pay attention to. He could be a guy that sneaks up with some air yards, some deep ball attempts, and sneaks up with some fantasy production. I'm one of the few people that's going to talk about him this week, but he's a guy in a grand situation that's going to run more routes that could hit for you in fantasy football. Rashod Bateman. I know some of you guys are sick of this name, but he's coming up off and on throughout the season. Scored a touchdown, has 2 touchdowns on the season. But the thing about this, the 20% target share. But the one thing to really note about Rashod Bateman on the season, there's a lot of games where he's getting deep targets. It's getting missed. His ADOT's higher than 10. It was 10.8 last week, but usually it's around 12 to 15 range. That being said, he's a guy just to throw in for a women of prayer, more for deeper leagues, more as a stash, more as a guy to play with lineups once you get decimated with injuries and bye weeks. That being said, pay attention, because the numbers are saying to pay attention to him. Melton, we got speed. We got the carousel effect with the Packers. And that's my strategy with the Packers, like with Wicks, like with Jaden Reed, like with Dubs when he's in, like with Watson when he's back. That is my strategy with the Packers. I've been saying this for like the last 2 years. They got a carousel effect with Reed leading the charge, but on any given week, any wide receiver can get it. He got some opportunity last week, not much fantasy production, but still with Wicks dropping balls, you could see him get more opportunity. But on the contrary to that, they kept going back to Wicks with targets, so you got to pay attention to his offense. But on any given week, any of these wide receivers can get it. That's the carousel effect. That is what wide receivers are going to be like for more teams going forward in the NFL, where it's week to week. You can't pinpoint the wide receiver to get for fantasy football. Mack Hollins. The spreadsheet is saying, look at this guy, especially when Khalil Shakir is out. 21% target share, ran on 63% of the routes, but we had an ADOT of 21.3, getting targets deep downfield. Deep downfield. I'm not picking it up for traditional leagues. I'm paying attention to him when Khalil Shakir is out, paying attention to the matchup, paying attention to his opportunities. If I'm in a 16-teamer or more and it's decimated at the waiver wire, most of these guys are picked up. Here's your guy. If Khalil is out, you may want to look at this, because we might be pushing a 20% target share with a good ADOT. Maybe not in the 20s, maybe it's 15 to 20 range. But again, deep targets is going his way, and over time, with different teams, we've seen him pop up with fantasy production, and it's always been in short bits, a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there. We might see that again with Mack Hollins, something to pay attention to. But those are the wide receivers we're looking at off the waiver wire. I think over 20, a big batch of them. Let me know who you're trying to get off the waivers this week. I want to hear about it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.